All right, welcome to the regular meeting of the Emory Unified School District Board of Trustees, March 8th, 2017. Let's open with the roll call, please.
Okay. Member Ball?
Here.
Member Solis?
Here.
Member Collins?
Present.
Member Cruz?
Here.
Member Inch?
Here.
Member Langner? Here. President Merriam?
Yes, here. Okay. We adjourned to the closed session, and there was no report out on that closed session, and we are reconvening at this time. Let's all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, that was a rousing rendition of Pledge of Allegiance. Now we have public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? You have any item that's not on the agenda, you have the ability or option to speak. As I see none, we'll move on to the next topic. And that is...
Sorry, it looks like we have...
Oh. Step right up. We can't hear you.
Because of the camera.
Thank
The
you.
camera can't hear you.
Yes.
It's the meeting's videotaped.
Go ahead and stand at the podium.
A couple of incidents that occurred last week at school. I don't know, I don't care. When the police were called twice to the school, is the board aware of this? Okay. So my granddaughter, who's in 5th grade, and a good student, and was to have graduated in June, Imani Perkins is her name. Her brother, who's in 1st grade, was scheduled to have an IEP on Friday, the 17th. Mother left him off at school on Thursday, the 16th, and someone called her and told her that he'd been suspended from the previous week, and his suspension time isn't up. Well, there are regulations, federal and state, that you can't suspend someone for more than 20 days in a school year. Now, this kid has been suspended multiple times, far beyond 20 days. So it's a violation of both federal and state education codes. He's a difficult child. As I said, there was an IEP scheduled for Friday, the 17th. Well, when Mom, for a living, works in Santa Rosa, she drives veterans to their medical appointments. She got a call to come pick her son up because he wasn't supposed to be at school because he was suspended. He should have been suspended until Friday the 17th, day of the IEP. Mom couldn't get back from Santa Rosa fast enough, and I guess the child was in Dr. Rubio's care for the length of time. My understanding, he was with Dr. Rubio for at least 2 hours, and Dr. Rubio questioned him about where he lived, who he lived with, how he got to school, and the kid just lost it. And as I said, it's clear this kid has emotional problems, therefore we had an IEP request in. So Dr. Rubio called the police saying he was going to charge the mother with abandonment. I have all of this in writing from him. He was going to charge the mother with abandonment because she left her son at school. Now, Mom tells me that the 5th day would have been Thursday, not Friday. I'm not certain about that because I don't know what day he was suspended from before. The bottom line is the suspension was illegal anyway because he was way beyond 20 days of suspension within the school year. The second thing is when a child has an IEP in place or pending, you can't expel the child. So Dr. Rubio did a great search and interrogated both the children, the first grader, the 6-year-old, and the 10-year-old, the 5th grade, my granddaughter, and got from them that they live with their mother in Oakland, and she drives them to school every day. And from that, he deducted that they were out-of-district enrollees. And the child's father, the first grader's father, lives in Emeryville, has always lived in Emeryville, continues to live in Emeryville. And that child, the first grader, was registered by his father with his father's address, an Emeryville address. My understanding is, and I could be wrong about this, I'm not certain, is that siblings can attend the school that their sibling attends. That was my understanding. And so, Dr. Rubio,
Your 3 minutes are up.
okay. So I just want to say Dr. Rubio has been in violation of federal and state laws. I have a history with Dr. Rubio. I'm sure he doesn't remember me. I used to work at the public defender's office in San Francisco. And Dr. Rubio has a long history of
you
calling
exceeded your 3
police
minutes, please.
particularly African-American students, and Dr. Rubio has a long history of violating state and federal regulations.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes are up.
Your 3 minutes. Ma'am, could you please have a seat?
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Dr. Rubio's contract will not be renewed. You will never increase your school's population.
Next topic, please. Any more public comment, please? As I see none, we'll move on to the next item. Item is award of Culver Flores Winters Incorporated Scholarship for the 2016-2017 scholarship.
Good evening. As we enjoy, almost not quite every year, but we have representative from Caldwell Flores Winters and Kush. I apologize, I'm forgetting how to pronounce it. Kiara. Here tonight. So Kush, come on forward, please. Caldwell Flores Winters has helped the district over the years with our bond work and is here tonight to present a scholarship award to one of our students. Really glad to have you and appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Dr. Rubio. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Kush Kiara with CFW. Very pleased to be here tonight. CFW is a local firm in Emeryville. We've been here almost 30 years, and we've had the privilege of serving your district for almost 15 years. And I'm over here tonight to present a scholarship to one of your students. About 9 years ago, CFW established a scholarship program for students of our clients. And our scholarship program is a little bit unique. There's many scholarship programs that take care of the highest performing kids, the kids who are at the top of their class. The CFW Scholarship Program specifically focuses on students who've overcome several difficulties to be able to be successful in life. And it rewards persistence, it rewards people who try hard, and people who have successfully overcome those obstacles. A great example of that is one of your students, Imad Yafai. Okay? Imad, if you could please come up. Okay? And Imad is a student who has spent a couple of years in Yemen initially, and then a couple of years back in the U.S., and then a couple of years back in Yemen, learning the Arabic alphabet and the Arabic language, and then back in the U.S., and he went back and forth several times. Okay? School is hard enough without having to go back and forth several times. Okay? But because of the support of the Emeryville community and the Emory School District, Mr. Yafai has been very successful. His international language is that of sports, and he has excelled in sports. He's the captain of several teams. Okay. So we are very pleased to present Mr. Yafai a check of $1,000 okay, as a token of our appreciation for the great job he's done. And, to go forward.
Yeah.
Would you like to say something?
Yeah.
Well, on the behalf of the board, we'd like to congratulate you on your efforts.
Thank you. It's been really hard, you know, when I first came back. I had a really tough first semester because I was still like, you know, a little like confused about the language because, you know, just switching from Arabic to English is totally different. But I tried my hardest, and second semester, I got my grades up, you know, and I just kept on going from there. I feel so much better about it.
I just want to share with the board a couple things about you that some of your teachers have shared with me, and one was that you're 17 going on 35, that you are extremely mature, responsible, and you're all about business, and wherever you go for college or whatever you're doing after high school, that you're going to be very successful. So I wanted to let the board know those comments.
Great.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I wanted to ask you if you had any thoughts about what you were going to do with the check.
Hmm?
Do you have any thoughts about what you're going to do with the money?
You know, put it towards my college fund.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope to be back next year to award another scholarship to one of your students.
Thank you. I
Thank
just
you.
want to take a minute to congratulate you. I remember you when you were just so high, and I'm always so happy and see the accomplishments that the students are making. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you, Coach.
All right, and now comes the time for reports. ETA report, anyone? All right.
Good evening. Mark Davis, ETA. Biggest thing on our plate right now is March 22nd, when the district and ETA began the bargaining process, and I believe that that information is in your packet tonight. We look forward to a very prosperous outcome, but all in all, the one thing I keep saying that ETA has always been and continues to be about the classroom, and that many of the things that are on our plate are about ultimately the kids. So we look forward to that process, and we'll see you then, John.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Any representative from the CSEA tonight? Now for the student representative. Would you like to discuss what's going on in the school?
Great. So we've just had our President's Week break, and the Friday before that we had our academic rally and Valentine's dance in Building A over there. We're planning a Easter egg hunt for the week before spring break, and on the Friday before that we're also going to have a talent show and a spring fling. Prom is set for May 20th, and tickets are on sale now for $65 and $80 or $85 for guests. And then in April they go up by $5 every month. So, yeah, that's it.
All right, great. Thank you for that. And now time for the superintendent report.
Yes, good evening. I want to start first by saying that I heard that Ms. Good was visiting the school today. I didn't get to see her, but related to Ms. Good visiting the high school and coming back from her maternity leave, I just want to publicly take a moment to thank Alvin Burns for being a great principal for the high school, Mr. Burns. We really appreciate everything that you've been doing to keep everything right on track, so thank you, good job. Even though you hang out with Mr. Davis, we like you. I'm kidding, just kidding. And I also would share with the board that recently, just for some more information, we are continuing to work on adding some features to our student information system so that we can give the parents more access for communication. I think the high school portal for parents is open now, but we'll be adding that as well for the K-8. I just wanted to share that with you. We are also urgently working on adding our enrollment process to Illuminate so that it's all built into one system instead of having two different companies. So that is just for your information as well as part of my update tonight, and I think that's all I got.
All right.
Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Rubio. And then finally, the board president's report. I just have a short report. I had myself and member Cruz Vargas attended a Friday afternoon mixer with the Mark Davis and several of the faculty, and it was an enjoyable evening. I appreciate the offer and look forward to meeting more of you, the staff, and along with others within the district. Mr. Cruz, would you like to, Vargas?
Just thought it was a great opportunity. Thank you for the invite. Thought it was a great opportunity to mix with teachers and learn more about what they do, and especially to know that there's a lot of very good teachers here that are very much looking to put the interests of our kids ahead of a lot of things. So very appreciative of that.
That's a report. Next item, consent calendar. Is anyone along those lines as far as pulling any of those items, 9.1 through 9.5?
I'd like to pull 9.2.
Was it just 9.2 so far? So far. And then maybe that's personal. Okay, all right.
I'm going to pull 9.5 as well. Do I have a motion? Anyone other item to be pulled? If not, do I have a motion for items 9.1, 9.3, and 9.4?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ms. Emery, roll call, please.
Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Cruz?
Yes.
Sorry, Member Vargas, sorry. Member Inch?
Yes.
Member Langner?
Yes.
President Miriam?
Yes. All right. Ms. Langdon, you said you had an item for 9.2?
Yes, I just wanted to find out sorry, hold on, I just pulled up the wrong document. I just wanted to hear from Dr. Rubio who the new hires are, and I guess in particular Melissa Hernandez, what grade she'll be teaching or what she'll be doing.
Well, I appreciate you pulling it. I was going to ask that one of you pulled it. We have Ms. Harrell tonight to actually answer those questions, so I appreciate your question.
Well, I'll start by introducing or giving a little bit of information about both people that we were recommending for hire this evening. First is the custodian. His name is Sangha Rojratnakiat, and he has over 20 years of building and construction experience, and he has worked both in Thailand and in the United States. With us tonight, we do have Ms. Melissa Hernandez. She is our English language development teacher from the 7th through 12th grade spans. She is credentialed in both English and Spanish and has been teaching the last 7 years in Philadelphia and New Jersey, and she's here with us this evening.
All right. Please step up to the podium if you'd like to say a few words.
In Spanish?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
No pressure, just if you,
No.
we just like to say hi.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to be here. I'm excited about the opportunity. Thank you.
What grade would you be teaching?
7 through 12.
Oh, thank you.
Well, congratulations and welcome aboard.
Bienvenida.
Any other questions for Ms. Harrell? Was that? No? Okay. Thanks, Ms.
No,
Harrell.
no further. Thank you. Okay. I pulled item 9.5 of ratifications list, and let me pull.
I'm sorry. We need a.
Oh yeah.
vote on that
Let's
too.
take a vote on that. Okay. Roll call, please.
I think we need motions first.
I'm sorry. Motion, please. Thank you.
So moved.
I second.
Vote,
Sorry,
please.
was that Ms. Collins? Second? Okay. Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
Member Inch?
Yes.
Member Langner?
Yes.
President Miriam?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. And now, item 9.5, ratification list. I have two items on that pertaining to amendment number 395 and item 454. And Mr. Baker may be able to assist us on this. Is it working?
Yeah,
Okay, thanks. as far as those two items that I've listed there for concern or question, I'm looking at this and I just, my heart just like drops when I see this, when the architectural firm issued over 2,000 drawings for a project this size, and then the contractor comes back and says he needs fee or a compensation to incorporate those into the process. Can you explain a little bit?
I will
further?
explain this a bit more, actually. So what this was is that, this is a bit arcane, but during any construction project, there are always questions and answers that come forth. Typically, those are done. The contractor will issue what's called a request for information, which is a question, and the architect will answer it back with, oftentimes might be a drawing or a written sentence. DSK, the way that they do their construction administration, they actually issue a complete drawing of that shows the change, or reissue the entire sheet with each one of those questions. And it's just what it's how they manage their work. It's something I've not seen before, nor had Turner. It's very unusual to do that. It's pretty inefficient, actually, in my view, but that's what DSK did. Despite that process, which then took actually quite a bit of time every week for us to kind of monitor, that really didn't impact the project, but it was a huge amount of extra work that had to be done by everyone on the team. Again, Turner originally requested over $220,000 for 2 additional staff to manage this process. After lots and lots of discussion on this, we were able to get them down to $34,000. But it was a huge amount of additional work. It's not industry standard. It is not in their, it's something that is outside their contract scope of work. And it was the way that DSK transmit information during the construction process.
All right, thank you for that. And then as far as the next item, item 540 or 545, or I'm sorry, 454 CR, the building E mezzanine HVAC. I was under the impression that this project was a design build, and if it's design build, wouldn't the responsibility lie with the contractor?
Correct, except what this was actually a code official change. There was design build, and then when we went through DSA, because it's a partially open and not really occupied space, during the DSA, Division of State Architect Approval process, they said you don't need to condition that space. Our inspectors of record then, and then the DSA field representative said, no, you do need to do that. So it was an increase in the design build MEP scope. It was not originally specified in the basis of design to have conditioning in that space. So this is actually an agency, this is a DSA field directive that space needed to be conditioned in order to be occupied.
So as far as condition, is it heating and vent only?
It's heating and ventilating.
Okay, just no, okay. I was
Correct.
just thinking, so that's what we received as far as new unit, louvers, ductwork, or is it just?
Louvers for intake. It's been a while since that went in, so I can't recall the exact system. But this was actually an inspector of record and DSA field directive.
All right, thank you. I have no further questions. Thank you. With that being said, anybody else have any questions pertaining to that item? If not, may I have a motion?
Question. The ratification list, are these items within budget?
Yes, all of the items being presented tonight, and I'll speak to that and when I do my ECC update, are within the project, are included in the project budget. What we're doing tonight is just the final approval of the board of the items. They've been included in the budget for quite some time.
All right, with that being said, may I have a motion for item 9.5?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
Member Inch? Member Langner?
Yes.
President Merriam?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Okay, next item. It would be discussion or action items. Starting off with Dr. Rubio, could you explain a little bit more on the collective bargaining process?
Yes, I can. As Mr. Davis pointed out in his update, we have our first scheduled negotiation session coming up on March 22nd between the school district and the teachers union bargaining team. The contract is set up to allow for specific reopeners that you'll notice on the second page of your document of compensation and benefits, as well as 2 additional articles by the choice of the teachers union and the choice of the school district. On the first page, you'll note that the Emory Teachers Association is notifying us that they would like to discuss hours and workday, and they listed salary as well, and that so far the district would like to talk about the teacher evaluation process, and we have not yet selected a second item. So we are bringing this to you to make sure that you have this information and that it is available to the public, that the Emory Teachers Association and the school district are announcing what areas we're focusing on so far for our beginning of our negotiation sessions. That was informational for you tonight. I believe it's an informational item for you. Is it listed incorrectly?
I believe you're correct. It's, and then any public comment with that as well. Any questions? Dr. Rubio, I do have a question pertaining to that. Based on previous negotiations, are we continuing on the same realm of questions and basically, I want to say, the financial package that we did last time around?
I'm not sure.
Along with establishing increase in salary, benefits, and then working hours. I think that was the three of the items that were discussed the last time.
Right now, I'll say this, and maybe you let me know if it answers your question. It's always we're always looking to do whatever we can to recognize the hard work of the teachers. If our budget allows that, then I think that's something that we're always willing to look at. But we have to look at it in the totality of the current budget, including the not very exciting budget the governor presented in January. However, we are always going to go ahead and look at salary and benefits again, and determine whether or not we're maintaining those numbers and levels, or if we're increasing or changing those somehow. So I don't know more than that yet, but it's something that each party will be discussing at the table on March 22nd.
Okay. Is this Mr. Davis's first time to negotiate?
I'm doubting it. Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right. With that being said, that was for information only. So we move on to the next topic.
We have Mr. Baker again tonight from Swinnerton to give us an update on the project here at Emeryville Center of Community Life. Mr. Baker, thanks again.
I just want to do full screen, sorry. Is it down? Apologies, I'm not familiar with this version of Adobe Acrobat. I think it's okay, though. Okay, apologies for my lack of technical proficiency here. Anyway, good evening. This is the ECSL update for March. Well, if this is not our last, it may be probably our second to last update on the project, as we're really complete now. So again, for those of you, I think everyone kind of knows which buildings are which now, A, B, C, D, and E, but I always have this diagram in case there's a question. So first on closeout, there's two things going on right now. The first is warranty work. So the warranty period commenced on December 5th. And any items that are not functional or complete must be repaired by Turner. What guarantees Turner is here is there's a warranty bond that Turner has on the project of $30 million, which is half the value of the project, the construction contract, just as an insurance policy, really. The warranty requests are submitted by Brad Helfenberger of the city of Emeryville. And what he does is if there's anything that is not functioning properly, he reports that to Turner. Turner at no cost has to come out and fix it. If it's an item that's identified that's not a warranty item, for example, wear and tear, Turner will point that out, and then the city and Turner, or the district and city and Turner will reach agreement that that's the case. But so far that process has gone relatively well, and we'll be continuing on, and we've got something in place that I think works pretty well. The Walhalla, as you can see, which is under construction right here, I just kind of want to go over the timeline because it's been a little bit of a saga. At the end of December, we found out that it was moved to a later ship. This is shipped from the Netherlands. It was specified by the landscape architect. It arrived at the Port of Los Angeles about 3 weeks ago on February 14th. It cleared U.S. Customs on the 23rd. On the 7th, I'm sorry, that should say 3/7, not 2, or that should say 2/27. There's a typo there. Site work commenced. We took up the old decomposed granite that was there and got rid of that. The installer, who is located in Vallejo, received it on the 28th, and it's scheduled for completion at the end, about next week. Right now, the next thing's going to happen at the end of this week. The bolts will go in place. You see there's rock, that's a base rock for the rubberized material that goes down on top of it. So they'll put the bolts in place, they'll put that rubberized material in, and then it comes in two big pieces. They'll truck it, they'll lift it into place with a vehicle, and then they'll attach the bolts. So it should be in place by next week. It's scheduled to be completed a week from today, actually. This next slide, which I apologize, it's maybe a little bit hard to see here. The City Schools Committee had asked us to do a summary of the final project budget. I'll go do a real quick review of this because we did this in quite deep. The board saw this presented last week. At the top you see final change order summary, and these are change orders to the Turner construction contract. The total submitted were $10.9 million. One of our duties on the project here is to negotiate those. We do an independent estimate. We meet with the subcontractors and negotiate in the best interest of the district and the city. The total savings for that process was about $1.5 million. So that 9.3 represents kind of two broad categories on the project. The first are changes not requested by the owner. When I say the owner, I mean the city and the district. And these are things like unforeseen conditions, like some of our site utility issues, required by permitting agencies, such as the HVAC and the mezzanine we talked about tonight. That's a perfect example, actually. And design errors and omissions, things that were not included in the documents. And a lot of these things were documented in the extra 2,000 sheets of drawings that we talked about earlier. We had budgeted in the ECCL budget 3 years ago, we budgeted 7% for these sorts of change orders. We came in about 8.7%, or a little bit higher, but still pretty good. Normally we like to budget about 10% for these things on a project. We were trying to be tight on the budget, or we were trying to be aggressive on the budget, so we budgeted 7%. But 8.7 is pretty good, actually. We commonly see 10% for these sorts of things on a project of this type. The next category of changes were owner-requested changes. These are things that the district or city asked to be added to the project. A classic example is the work at the Walhalla or the pool, some of the classroom technology, such as these touchscreen monitors. They were things that were added during the project. And the good thing is that these were things that in each case, the district chose to add funding to the project so that these things could be added to the project. And the breakout here is about 1.6 million district-initiated changes, about 1.9 city-initiated changes, there's a category here called value engineering reconciliation, and what that is the city and district at time of the JOA, just to keep things in budget, decided to set a target of $3 million of savings for certain elements of the project. They weren't identified yet, but the design and construction team and ourselves worked together during the project. We were able to get $2.4 million of that savings, but there's about $600,000 that we were not able to get. These are things that had not been designed yet, so we put this into the owner category also. So about $4.2 million of owner changes. So again, during the project, the district added funding to the project to pay for some of those owner requested changes. And so I've got a summary here of what district funding was added. There were developer fees added very early on in the project of about $500,000. The board approved developer fees of about $2 million 2 years ago, and that was really primarily for the pool. I'm sorry, do I need to enter a code in here?
I'm going to try to get it for you. Sorry, 1 second, John. John is coming in. Hold on.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay. And then additional bond funding of 4.5 was added, and that was half of that was to pay for FF&E, which was not funded. And there's some redevelopment dollars funded also. So the additional funding added to the project during the course of the project was approximately $8.5 million. So the question is, where did that money go? And so I wanted to, on the lower right-hand corner is a summary of those added costs. These are project costs that were in addition to the originally approved budget 3 years ago. The delta in the non-owner change orders, that $1 million number that you see up above, that's where we went over our budgeted contingencies for those things by $1 million is there. All of the owner added things, $4.2 million is there. The $2 million FF&E funding, classroom technology, an extension of the Santa Fe lease. You'll see 2 items there, OSIP fees and DSA fees. The OSIP is the owner-controlled insurance program from the Keenan statewide SOAP program, which is our insurance policy. They require, after all project costs are known, to give you a final accounting, and then their insurance cost is based on a percentage. The Division of State Architect is the same thing. They want the final construction costs, and there's a small amount of that. There's an amount that they add on. You'll see the Walhalla, which is over $300,000, which is added, and then that other category is about 100 different line items that all went up or down a little bit, and the net was about a $50,000 increase from the budget that was approved 3 years ago. So in total, about $8.9 million of additional costs that were not included in the original budget, but we had 8.5 of additional funding. So there's a delta of about $387,000 where we were over budget. And this was discussed at the city schools meeting. There's language in the joint operating agreement that talks about if there's additional funding, the city and district will convene and discuss this. And at city schools last week, it was agreed that the city and district over the next 30 days will discuss that and determine additional funding that would be able to fund that amount. Before I open this up for questions, I just want to point out that right now we have about $1 million left funding that is not, we have things that still need to be paid for. There's the Turner's retention, there are the change orders approved tonight, some FF&E costs, and then these fees for DSA and the OSIP. So we still have dollars. These final costs, there are probably about $500,000 of costs that won't hit the project, if you will, until this summer, and that'll include the OSIP fees and the DSA fees. So there is time to resolve the funding with the city, and then those things, there would be funding in place to pay for those things. But in the order of things, we want to close the Turner contract out first because that value is what determines some of these additional fees that we will need to pay in the next few months. And so our goal tonight, these are the last change orders that you will see before the board. Approve those, that closes that contract out. We still have dollars in the bank to pay those. And then we have other costs coming later this summer with the OSIP fees and DSA fees and retention. So we have adequate time to resolve these issues and move forward. That is my ECCL report for tonight, and if there are any questions, I'll defer back to President Merriam to further discussion.
All right, questions, discussions?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned something around $1 million worth of expenses that are, did I understand correctly? Are those included in this 8.9? Or should we
Yes.
expect an additional?
No,
$1
they're included in here. They just have not been paid yet.
Oh, okay. But they're included. They're part of the 8.9.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. I can sleep better at night. Thank you.
Anyone? I'll ask you a question since, yes, I know that I've issued, and we've had this discussion before, but as far as issuing what I call my punch list for, I did a walk through the site and to the buildings, and there were several items that, as I walked today, that have yet to be done. What is the status of those? And I'd like to find out what's the time frame of those completions.
So there's two things. That list, which I had understood it had been sent to you, which I will send it to you before I leave the room tonight. The architect walked that list. We gave that list to Turner. They performed everything that they believe was in their scope of work. It was back checked by the architect. There were about, I would say, about 20% of the items on that list that both Turner and the architect agreed were not in the Turner contract scope of work. That doesn't mean there are things that don't need to be done. Some of the items were code issues that were accepted by the inspectors, which you believe were code issues. We were happy to revisit those. One thing that I was clear with everyone about is that when we granted final completion, we still have the warranty period. So anything on that list that is still not done, at any time we can take that to Turner and say we would like this to be done. So what I think we want to do is I'll send you that list again, and then the items that are marked and they're not in scope of work, let's discuss those. Right. And we have a warranty period where Turner's responsible for things that are in their scope to complete those. If there are things that is not in their scope which are design issues, that are some of the items on your list were design issues that were installed as designed, but yourself and ourselves agree that may not have been designed properly. Let's talk to DSK about those things.
And then finally, there had to do with an item that was on, I think, the architect's, I want to say, not O&M, but having to do with the deck condition on the second floor.
Yes.
What's the status of that right now?
And I had forwarded to you and the superintendent about 2 or 3 weeks ago the latest proposal from DSK, which is they propose some traffic coatings. They propose putting actually diamond plate, which is steel plates on that. I don't think any of us think that those are valid solutions. So it still is an issue that, again, we've got occupancy. We've cleared all the code officials have signed off, so we're good to go. But it's a long-term durability issue. And I think the next step would be to meet again with DSK to talk about those solutions and that issue.
Thank you. Any further questions?
So I'm just wondering, what's taking so long to tie up all these little loose ends?
Again, final completion was granted in December, and that was after completion of the punch lists. And then following that is negotiation of change orders. And we've spent the last 2 months negotiating this final cost, which happens at the end of a job. We've been pretty aggressive about holding firm on the district's position. And the last 2 months, that process allowed us to knock another about $700,000 of cost off, or savings from what Turner submitted. That process takes a while, but at the end of the day, we think that's a worthwhile process to take that time to do that, because we save the district money. And so that's why that process took a bit longer. The other thing is that there are other things, again, there's about a year after you finish a job where you have to do things. For example, again, these fees from Division of State Architect, from our insurer, those always come later in the project. It takes about a year to close out these pieces. However, the point I want to make is that this is our final budget. These costs are all closed out now, with the exception of some of these fees that we've got, the OSIP and DSA fees are estimates. There are a few things that are estimated, but we've closed all the Turner costs out. Those are all certain now. All the consultant costs, the furniture costs, those are all closed out. are probably less than 1/10 of 1% of costs that still have some need to be finalized, but we're pretty much done now at the current time.
Exactly. If not any further questions, any public comment? All right, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Raker. Okay, item 10.3, which is final hazardous soil off-haul, Turner change order request number 617. Mr. Raker, can you elaborate on that?
Yes. So the background on this is that one thing, and there's been we've come to the board 3 previous times regarding soil. The state of California has very stringent requirements for safety, obviously safety of students in regard to soil. And Emeryville is a place that has a history of a lot of industrial uses. We had a little bit of that on the site. At one of the earliest phases of the project about 3 years ago is we did a comprehensive soil remediation where we actually dug soil up, tested it, transported it to the appropriate landfills, and put some back in place. During the project, though, we had to do excavation for foundations and utilities and site work. So we knew there would be some additional soil off-haul coming. And again, that unforeseen condition category I spoke to earlier was budgeted for this kind of stuff. So this is the final site work off-haul from all of the finished site work, the planters, the field, all of the kind of site work that you see, all the concrete walkways, all that kind of stuff. And it was, if you recall during the project, we had piles of this stuff out kind of between the gym and the field. And that's what you do is you put that out there, it's tested. And most of it goes to what's called a Class 2 landfill, which is model things like motor oil and things of that nature. Class 1 has things where it might have some other sorts of substance in it. They're a little more, we didn't have too much of that on the ECL project. But the thing is that the DSA, as the agency having jurisdiction, requires a very clean and stringent program of removing soil that has anything in it that is even moderately hazardous from a school site. And so that's got to be transported off. It can't be reused on site. It has to be transported off into a landfill. So this is our final cost of doing that. That includes the trucking charges and the labor to remove the dirt and test the dirt and all that. And so we reviewed this. This is all done on time and materials tags. We reviewed the backup. It has to be signed off by the inspector of record and by ourselves. And the manifest are separately signed. The manifest is the actual work order to take it from the site to the certified landfill. Those are signed by the district. I think Dr. Rubio signed about 50 or 60 of those during the course of the project. So this is the final soil off-haul cost for the project. And so the recommendation is the cost, $179,158, and we're recommending that for approval.
Any questions?
And that's already been budgeted for, I believe you
Yes,
said?
every item discussed tonight is not only in the budget I showed you, but has been budgeted for quite some time. These are the final negotiated prices.
Thanks for the clarification.
I'm sorry, can I hear you?
Explain to me, I keep hearing that these were in the budget, but I'm also hearing that we're over budget.
It's been accounted for in the numbers that we have.
Correct.
Is that the, okay.
Correct.
Right, in a budget, it was accounted for, but the whole project is over budget. The project as a whole has gone over budget.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's,
So-
and again, the city and the district are going to be talking over the next month about a funding source to fund that amount.
Right, but those are to fund things that were added on later, like the Walhalla.
Correct.
Extra things.
It's the difference between funding has been added and scope that has been added, if that makes
Right,
sense.
so if all of these things were budgeted for, how come we're over budget?
I guess I will clarify my question, which is that these have been accounted for. That's in the current figures that we're looking at?
Yes, they're all included in these current figures.
Then can you tell me why we are over budget? Or are you saying that we're not over budget?
It's been clear with this, there's $387,000 that is not currently funded, okay?
But
And
those were things-
this chart intends to
Right,
illustrate
but
why that
That all
is.
happened after you got more money. That all happened after you opened up more bonds and you added to the project.
So I can go through this again because it's not that simplistic, frankly. What this shows is this shows where the added costs took place, where they occur, okay? And the chart on the lower right-hand corner shows what the additional project costs were in comparison to the additional funding, okay? So there's more detail, there's a lot more detail than this, but this is in order to provide a summary of, I would hope that this illustrates what the additional costs were, what the additional funds were.
I don't think you're understanding my question. Of all of these things that we keep going back for more money, were already in the budget. This right here, if I'm not mistaken, indicates that we took out more money and then we spent more money on different things.
Correct.
Right. So even though we're budgeted, these things that we're going back and getting money for, like the dirt, that money's gone.
So, for example, the dirt is you see the category unforeseen conditions, 2.699. That number is included in that number. So the two items tonight, the two that we're voting, this one and the next one, are included in these numbers. They're not in addition to these numbers.
I understand that, but we are over budget.
That is correct. That's what this sheet shows.
Yeah. And
Right.
if all these things were budgeted for, then it didn't come out right. If these were budgeted for and we have the money, then we shouldn't be over budget.
May I chime in here? Mr. Baker, this is based on additional scope, correct? These costs that were associated, i.e. like the pool, for one, that's a large portion of that over basically extending the cost. And that's, if you look at the numbers there, the pool is what, 1.2 million above?
1.7 actually was the
1.7.
pool, yeah.
And that was never included in the original scope of work.
Correct.
So when added the 700,000, thinking that we're going to get a pool improved for $700,000 when it came in 1.9, that money needed to be accounted, that cost needed to be accounted for. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best, again, the board took action 3 times to add funding to the project. The first was immediately after the JOA was approved, which there were developer fees of $500,000, which, by the way, have to be spent in a certain time frame on construction. Again, 2.1 was added by the board as a methodology of funding the pool, and then I think the 4.3 was approved. It shows here's 4.5 because there's some bond interest also. That was approved for a specific list of items. The Walhalla, to fund FF&E, which had been taken out of the original budget, educational technology, and some other things. I don't have that list in front of me, but I'd be happy to look it up. But this is just a comparison. There's additional funding added, and then these costs here are additional costs that are in addition to the budget that was approved by the city and the board 3 years ago. And this, if you compare these two, I'm just trying to show where the cost was added, where the costs were added, and where the funding was added.
So maybe I'm asking the wrong person. I understand that. What I want to know is if we aren't finished paying for all the things that were budgeted for, why were more things added to the budget? Because you asked for more money, you spent more money, and we're still not finished paying.
I'm trying to make sure I understand your question. We did, as a school district, spend more money throughout the project. The thing, I'm not sure, Member H, it's your question about timing. These aren't new things that are just coming in right now that we're adding, that we just said last month, we're going to add these things to the project.
So my question is, why were things added when we weren't finished with all the things that needed to be paid for? Like, why did we add a $300,000 Walhalla when we are still getting bills?
Oh, I understand the question. So when that was approved by the board back in March, I believe, We did not know at that time that we were going to have a shortfall.
How could you not know that?
Well, we, as a school board, again, did not know that.
I
And
shocked.
Swinnerton didn't, well, okay.
Wasn't,
so-
some of it was unforeseen
Yeah, I can maybe
circumstances.
get, both items tonight are really good examples of this. We had not yet done this work, okay? So there was quite a bit of soil that had to be moved around the site. And when you dig the soil up, before you put it back in place, you have to test it, okay? So the assumption is, that if it's clean soil, you can put it back in place. For example, one problem we had was that, and which a lot of this was that we intended to reuse a lot of the soil on site in the planters. There are a lot of planters throughout the site. When that soil was tested, the landscape architect expected it had to reach certain levels of pH, et cetera. It was found that we had to actually bring in new dirt because it was not going to be the pH levels were too high so that plants could grow properly. So we actually had to bring in a bunch of new soil and take a bunch of soil out. That was something that we didn't know until we did our grading and actually tested the soil that was in place. So these are when the Walhalla was approved, we had not yet done this work.
That's my point.
Okay.
That's exactly my point. You should have anticipated, or somebody should have anticipated, overages, and before they started spending more money, making sure. You just said yourself that Emeryville has a reputation for having soil that might be contaminated. Why anybody was shocked that it was contaminated and you had to do extra with the soil is beyond me. And I feel like it was incredibly irresponsible to dedicate money to something like the Walhalla when we had not finished paying for stuff that we didn't know what the cost would be. And I'm done.
No, Barbara, if I may ask, why does it matter now? I mean, the money has been spent. Of course, it was unforeseen, but I mean, those things naturally happen. We have additional expenses. So I'd love to understand a little bit more
Because
as
it's
to
our
why.
responsibility to foresee things. It's our responsibility to make sure.
What I'm trying to
that-
say is that why do we keep bringing it up? I mean, we spent it already. These are expenses. So why does it matter? Why is it important? I'd love to understand your perspective as to why you feel it's important for us to dig in and try to point fingers as to why didn't we foresee this? Why
Because
is it
people
important?
spent money. People spent money thinking that they had money to spend when they didn't, and that's somebody's responsibility.
The only thing I would remind everybody is that this was a decision the full school board made last March. So this was a school board decision.
That's correct. And I do want to mention too, as far as going back to, it's understanding that we had, working with the city in good faith pertaining to one of the largest expenditures. I keep going back to the swimming pool as a prime example of what? Of why we have this skew between the balance and what we owe. I think that is a perfect example of looking at a cooperative approach to the process, and we are still in negotiations, still talking with the city and to basically rectify this. Now, on a size of project of this nature of 70 million plus and upward, to have a shortfall of less than, what percentage-wise?
It's 3.3% or something like that.
The 388,000, just basically the 388,000 to the 7, is pretty good in the overall picture. In my experience of 25 years of doing school construction and looking at budgets and looking at construction and looking at the whole process, overall it's a good project. And as far as we're talking about these details that have occurred, and we do have a shortfall, but I believe that with working with the city and working within the team here, that we can come to some resolution.
And that's actually a good building block to where I was going with my questions to Barbara, is that it seems like it would be very productive for us to see forward, not backward. I think, again, like, it is what it is. These are the expenses that we have, and thankful that we are going to be able to cover those expenses in collaboration with the city. And I would love to, turn the page and continue to look forward, and for us to focus on, on how do we improve the well-being of our students.
If there isn't any other questions or comments, any public comment regarding this item? I see none. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins? Member Inch?
Yes.
Member Langner?
Yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
President Miriam?
Yes, motion carries unanimously. Next item is item 10.4.
So this is the last change order on ECCL that will be brought to the board. This one was a real sticky one. We received, late in the project, in fact, we received this in January, a kind of unexpected change order request from Morrow Meadows as the electrical subcontractor for $581,000 for additional overhead. We, of course, immediately rejected it. We had probably about 5 meetings with Turner and Morrow Meadows. Turner was actually pretty helpful in kind of also, I'll use the word hammering them. There were some things in this change order that were legitimate. They included, the bulk of it actually was union labor rate increase. And what this is that there was work that in the original bid was going to take place during fiscal year 14-15 that went to 15-16, et cetera, et cetera. And, there was good documentation. We had our estimating group do an independent analysis of this, and where Morrow Meadows had to pay higher rates than their bid, what they bid because work was done in later fiscal years than they had anticipated. There was a longer duration of some rental equipment, some added supervision, a lot of that related to, much of it related to the classroom technology that was added. There was off-hours work for canopy light installation because our canopy fabrication, through no fault of Turner, was late, and we decided to put those in after school opened, and there was electrical there. And again, the additional data telework management. So we did find, after a lot of discussion, that there were some things in here that were legitimate additional costs. This was Morrow Meadows' overall contract on the project was about, I think, about $9 million. So at the end of the day, we after a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, we are recommending that $237,706 of what was submitted are legitimate costs in addition to Morrow Meadows' contract scope of work. We looked at all of these in the context of the lease-leaseback agreement, and so we are recommending these this for approval.
Do you have any questions or discussion items pertaining to this from the board?
It seems like Turner keeps coming back with charges and more charges and charges and more charges for stuff that either should have already been completed or should have been included in the scope of the work.
Actually, there's been very little of that. This is the only subcontractor that had a request like this. To be quite candid, I would normally expect more of it. Because in my 30 years experience, this actually was really a pretty well-run construction project. Turner did not ask for one dime of change order for any additional time that they put in, which is pretty remarkable. So this subcontractor did. Oftentimes you have at the end of a job, it's not uncommon for subcontractors who, and they admitted that they lost money in the job, which is not our problem, for them to really kind of scour and see if there's additional costs that are legitimate and are allowed per contract. And this is the only subcontractor that actually had this kind of request over 20 subcontractors. So frankly, we're pretty lucky, and I think that's because they did do well on the project. But after much discussion, review of the lease-leaseback agreement, we do think that these are legitimate. But this is really the only one of these that we had on the ECCL project.
Mr. Baker, you may want to elaborate on basically the composition or the relationship between a subcontractor and a contractor, because some people may confuse the two, where Turner is not making this change order, it's the subcontractor, and
Correct.
Turner takes a portion of that,
Yeah.
but a very insubstantial number.
Correct. There's a 5% markup for their management, but this is, so Turner manages the work in the field. Turner doesn't actually, Turner does not actually have people who build, they manage subcontractors. They manage the painter and the people who do the flooring and the lighting and put the windows in. Those are all subcontractors to Turner. And so this particular, the subcontractor put this forth, and Turner, in fact, was actually instrumental in getting them to push that number down and make most of this go away. So that, in that case, it really is, even though it's a change order to Turner, this really is for this subcontractor, Morrow Meadows.
Thank you. I do have, and going back to another soapbox I had over this project, it's having to do with this electrical contractor, and I want to make sure I've spelled this right because it's Morrow Meadows. I just want to make sure that I remember that.
Yes.
Thank you. Having to do with the change because it's a design build or through, I don't know how it arrived, but the use of MC cabling versus the traditional conduit and conductors. I know this is details that probably nobody wants to know about, but having said that, the cost of putting in the MC cabling is a lot less, and for them to come back like this is just, it's beyond me. But it is what it is, but it's just this, how they can look us straight in the face and come with this amount.
We've done a lot of research on this topic, and I want to point out that was a cost savings. It was their contract included MC cable, did not include the conduit, and we looked into that quite vigorously. So they did not save money on that. It was less cost to the district. It was a decision made by the district about 4 years ago that was done by the district architect, and you can debate whether that should be done or not. But that was that MC cable. It was actually their base scope of work, so they did not realize any kind of savings from that change. I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that.
Well, but here again is that I look at the original schedule, and it had that the number duration of the days on to do that task, and when you change from wiring and conduit to MC cabling, you save time, and it was never reflected in the schedule, at least what was issued to the inspector of record and along with what Turner issued. So for them to claim that they didn't save any time or money is beyond me.
Well, what it is, what occurred here, and this is a little bit arcane, so I hope not to get too into the weeds here, is that change was made late in the project. The basis of design, which is the contract scope for Morrow Meadows, was MC cable, not hard pipe conduit. Their engineer, however, in the drawings showed hard pipe conduit, and that went to DSA. Now, DSA does not govern electrical, so they made no comment on it. So when we look at the DSA set of drawings, it shows hard pipe conduit, and the inspector said, wait, that's hard pipe conduit. And Morrow Meadows says, wait, that's not right. We're putting MC cable as a scope work. Those drawings are incorrect. We actually changed the drawings which is what the IOR required to show what's actually installed. And so it was actually an odd thing that the engineer made a mistake after the scope was changed, and that's why the drawings showed that. The baseline schedule, which was reviewed and accepted and put forth by Turner and their subcontractors, was for the contract scope of work, which included MC cable.
All right. Any further questions?
No, just a comment, just to share with you. I did get a large school district in Northern California who called me recently and asked for a recommendation regarding Turner. And while I strongly recommended Turner, I did go out of my way to say, but I would avoid Morrow Meadows as a subcontractor. Right. And I felt okay about that because I haven't been very happy with how this is going. Right. I just thought you should know that.
All right, thank you. All right. With that being said, any public comment? Seeing none, may I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
No.
Member Inch?
No.
Member Vargas? Member Langner?
Yeah,
Member
say
Langner?
yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
President Miriam?
Yes. Motion carries 5-2. Okay, next item. It is item 10.6. We have the California School
10.5.
Board Association. Dylan?
10.5.
I'm sorry. Oops. Sorry. All right. Yeah. Approval of second. I wanted to get out of here. Item 10.5. Sorry about that.
So moved.
The approval for second interim report for the 2016-2017 budget. Thanks, guys.
Good evening. We have our expert in finance, Ms. Dora Sue, with us this evening to present her second interim report for the 2016-17 budget. And I believe Ms. Tamery is just going to do something there to the screen to get you going. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
You know how to forward it? All right, I just do this, right? Okay, all right, thanks. Good evening, everyone. We are here tonight to look at the second interim budget for Emory Unified School District and have the board to adopt the appropriate certification. So here are the three classes of certification: positive, qualified, and negative. And the budget goals are to maintain the district fiscal solvency and balance the budget with expenditures not to exceed the revenue. And here is the funding for Emory for second interim budget. And here you can see the breakdown between the what happened?
Dora Sue, we're sorry, one second. We're having a computer glitch over here.
Okay.
And then we'll get you right back up there again. Sorry, Dora. We do appreciate you
All
being
right.
up there, Dora. It may just take a second. Okay. So let's try again. 9-4. Okay.
All right, thank you. So on this slide, you're going to see the breakdown between the unrestricted and the restricted funding. LCFF, 6.4 million. Federal, 317,000. Other state income, 1.08 million. Local income, 3.4 million. And the SALPA transfer for special ed, 416,000. So for a total funding of $11.7 million. And then on this one is the expenditures. Again, it breaks it down into unrestricted and restricted expenditures. Certificated salaries, 4.4 million. Classified salary, 1.1 million. Employee benefits, $2.8 million. Books and supplies, 472,000. Contracts, 2.6 million. And capital outlay is 30,000. Indirect is 20,000. So to make up a total expenditures of $11.5 million. And the bottom of the slide, the 109,000 is the general fund contributions to the food services program. And then this slide shows you the fund balance and the beginning balance as of July 1st, 2016. We have $3.3 million. So add on to what we are going to get on the period slide, we will have a projected ending balance of $3.4 million. And the lower end of the slide shows you the breakdown of the components of the ending balance. The $466,000
$166,000 is the 4% minimum reserve.
Dora, would you mind repeating that for a second? What is the reserve that we are supposed to, the minimum reserve that we're supposed to have?
Yeah, 4% is the state required minimum reserve. It comes to $466,000. And we designated $500,000 for the equipment technology upgrade. And then the ECCL replacement reserve is $388,000. So on this slide, it gives you the comparison between what we are seeing compared to the first interim that we did back in October 2016. So as you can see, we are projected to get an increase of $413,000 in the funding. And we are going to go into detail on what makes up the $413,000. So LCFF, a slight increase of $1,172. And then federal income, an increase of $23,000. Most of the money comes from the MAR money. MAR stands for Medical Administrative Activities. And then the state funding is a slight increase of $319. And then other local income, we are going to see a projected increase of $388,000. For the unrestricted, it includes what we're going to get from the lease rental, and also the incentive check that we received from the PG&E, $144,000. That makes up to the $307,000 increase. And then for the other local restricted, the $81,000 is the additional city share of the maintenance budget, and also the third-party rental income that makes up the $81,000. Okay, expenditures. After update, expenditures are increased by $143,000. And here is the breakdown of the $143,000. Thanks for President Don Merriam pointed out to me there is a typing in error on this slide. On the third column where it said 16-17 first interim, actually it should be second interim. So we are comparing the second interim with the first interim numbers in here. And for certificated salaries, there is a slight decrease of $104,000, mainly to do with the vacancy, one of the vacancy at the NEA site. And also there is a position, which is a special ed position, that we ended up contracted out to a vendor instead of as a FTE position. And then the third reason for the decrease is apparently there's a savings in the special ed sub costs that we are going to see the savings in there. So that mainly makes up the decrease of the $104,000. And then classified salary, a decrease of $13,000. Mostly is got to do with the outreach position that we budget for the whole year, but ended up we did not hire the person until the mid-year. So that's the savings on the classified salaries. And for the employee benefits, we see a savings of $74,000. Again, it's mostly to do with the NEA's vacancy. We don't have to budget for the fringe benefits. And also for the special ed position that we contracted out, so we see the fringe benefit savings in here. And also there is a savings in the retirement, post-employment retirement costs. From before we have last year, we have about 6 retirees that we have to cover for their retiree benefits, and right now we have only 3. Books and supplies, so there is an increase of $70,000. mostly is purchase of the IT materials. And also we increased the supplies budget under the maintenance budget too. So that makes up the 70,000. And contracts and services, an increase of 274,000. I believe most of them is, I'm gonna grab the list because it includes a lot of items that makes up the 274,000. So for special ed, there is an increase on the MPA, non-public agency, of 68,000. And then because we contracted out one of the position, so we added on another 25,000 on the contracts for special ed. So altogether is 93,000 for special ed. And then for the operational maintenance budget, we have to add on utilities budget. For electricity is 95,000. For water is 22,000. And also we added on contracts under the maintenance budget, 18,000. So for a total of 135,000 on the maintenance budget. And then we put aside another 20,000 contracts on IT contracts. And then another 11,000 for the printing requirement that we need to do to send out the enrollment notices. $6,000 for the utilities at 61st Street. So that add up to the 274,000 that we are seeing on the increase on contracts.
Dora?
Yes.
Quick question. Sorry to interrupt. You mentioned that there was about a gap or an increase of about $90,000 regarding electricity. Do we happen to have more context about why the 90,000 went to that additional electricity? Did we just under forecast perhaps? And that way that's a learning for us, so that for the future budgets we will allocate a different expense, a different amount for future years? Or?
Because with the way that we're receiving the invoices from PG&E, we need the additional 95,000 of June. Answer your question. Because during the budget adoption, we've been adding the NEA site and the high school site together to budget for the utilities together. But apparently that is not matching what we are using at this site, at this ECCL site. So that's the reason why we have to increase the budget in order to do a more accurate actual spending.
So there is some learning on our part. It may be that keeping the lights on in the field so it can be rented till 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. every night is more costly than we knew in our budget projections. And maybe running all the buildings is more costly. So there is some learning still that we have to answer your question.
Great, yeah, and maybe the other important question around that is that in your projected budget for 2017 and then the year after that, are you projecting this increase in utilities?
Yes, right now on the multi-year, which we will look at later on, we will be using the current year estimate to base on the multi-year budget for the subsequent 2 years. Again, just like what Dr. Rubio mentioned earlier, before we had our facilities closed pretty well at 5:30 or 6 p.m., but right now we are having it open till 11:30. And obviously with these turf field lighting, it will add up the cost.
Okay, great, thank you.
Ms. Dorosu, I might want to ask Dr. Rubio too. Based on this line of the budget, we will use this information for our was it the solar forgive me for the actual term, but the solar installation possibilities that we established that we need a year's worth of use to establish our plus, our worth, our solar.
Yes, it'll be data, so we'll look at usage for that. We'll use that information. Wait, so adding. Okay.
Out a degree of 10,000 from capital out contracts. And indirect support costs is increase of $2,489. So that makes up the total increase of $143,000 on the expenditures on the second interim budget. Contributions. So these two programs are the ones that need the general fund support. Is special ed $736,000 and ongoing maintenance $710,000. That makes up the total of $1.4 million. Multi-year projection. So on this slide, this is only a summary of the multi-year projection. As you can see, the income side is pretty well flat. We are seeing no increase on the revenue side, but on the expenditures, we are seeing the expenses actually increasing over the next two subsequent years. And because we are looking at this multi-year, it will be a good timing for you to turn into the assumptions. The 2 pages on the assumptions, because that will help us to understand this multi-year summary. So on the first page on the assumptions, as you can see, on the second line, you see LCFF gap close percentage. On 16-17 is 55.28%, but on 17-18, it dropped to 23.67%. And that is the reason on this multi-year summary, you see a drop from $11.7 million in 16-17 to $11 million in 17-18. And again, this assumption is based on the governor January budget information. And then another thing that I want to point to your attention to is down below where you see the STRS and PERS. So the STRS rate, it jumps from 12.58% this year to 14.43% next year, and again to 16.28% in 18-19. And actually, I did some calculations myself. With that rate increase just on the STRS, for next year payroll, we are going to see an increase of $134,000 from this year payroll to next year payroll just for paying out the STRS contributions. And again, from the 17-18 to 18-19, another increase of $103,000 just because of the STRS contribution rate increase.
I'm sorry, is that just STRS? That's just STRS, not PERS?
Just STRS. And we're going to talk about PERS. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
So I just want to emphasize to the board, with the FRED funding that we're going to get in the next 2 years, but at the same time, we are getting pressure with all these pension contribution rates going up. So $134,000 from 16-17 to 17-18, another $103,000 from 17-18 to 18-19. So now,
Dora, those incremental expenses in STRS, are they included in your projections for 2017?
Yes, that's right. So, so now we're back on the assumptions page. We're still on the first page. So the PERS is from 13.888% this year to 15.8% next year, and to 18.7% in 18-19. So what I calculated out for the PERS on our payroll, we're going to see $45,000 increase from 16-17 to 17-18. And out of 40,000 increase from 17-18 to 18-19, just on the PERS. So the only good news that I can see on the second interim for the multi-year projection is actually the workers' comp, because our rate dropped from 2.33% to 2.06%, and that is the only news. And then on the second page of the assumptions, I listed the state aid, the EPA funding, and the property taxes. And pretty well, you see the no increase at all on the LCFF. And then for the more money, which we received this year, $36,000, we cannot budget for 17-18 and 18-19 because we only can budget when we receive the money. So that is another reason why you see we're not seeing any increase on the revenue side.
Dora, a question, a question on state aid for 18-19. You mentioned that you received guidance from the state that the funding would go down, and that's why that state line went from 718 on 16 to 586. So it went down, 130, 140,000.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, is there a reason for us to believe that that will actually go up to 800,000?
Well, on the 18-19, now go back to the first page, where you see the on the second line, you see the LCFF gap close percent.
Yes.
So from 55% to 23%, 16-17 to 17-18. That's why you're seeing a drop of 718,000 on the state aid to 586,000. And why we're going back up in 18-19, according to the January governor budget, the percentage go back up to 53.85% in 18-19. That's why you see a jump from 17-18 to 18-19.
Thank you. So the state did provide guidance
Yes,
about
yes.
about this going
That's
up
right.
again. So it goes down next year, but it'll go up the year after that.
That's right.
Greatly appreciate it.
But again, there will be a May revise coming up from the governor. So hopefully this number will improve.
Mr. Orsu, I have a quick question pertaining to the second page of the assumptions. The one-time discretionary funds, maybe I missed it before, but between 16-17 and 17-18, it basically decreased by 107,000. What was the cause of that?
Okay. Okay, the one-time discretionary fund for this year, 16-17, is $214 per ADA. So that will give us roughly 138,000. But for next year, 17-18, it's going to drop to $48 per ADA, and that will give us only $31,000. And even in 18-19, there's no mention of any one-time discretionary, so we have to zero budget it.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I just have just kind of, I don't know if you're finished, but having to do with like a historical pattern or just. Do you recall, because we've gone through this, at least since I've been on the board, we've gone through this up and down, but it seems like in the big picture we've always been on a positive, because I think 2 years ago we were looking at really disastrous financials.
That's right.
It moved itself and it sounds like, it looks like we're kicking the can down the road. Is it still under that same a feeling or a sense that we're going to do the same thing where the next interim or the final, that we're going to see a turn and it basically be positive for the next year? I mean, what are the factors that would really turn it the other way to be, this is the way it's going to be?
Well, what the governor mentioned in the January budget is he was very conservative in that January governor budget. And he did mention all these revenue that coming in, the actual revenue that coming in is actually below his adopted budget figures. That is the reason why he mentioned that he has to be so conservative this time in January. And also with the whole thing about LCFF is under a lot of uncertainty. It depends on a lot of what's the condition of California economy. And also with the federal administration, are they going to continue funding the Medi-Cal? We don't know, see? So there are a lot of uncertainty here. So what we can do in here is actually to get all the information available to us and present the board and everybody else a reasonable estimate on the budget to the best knowledge that we can. So yes, I'm going to see it's going to be up and down, up and down, and up and down. And also the and another thing, all these one-time grant, like the college readiness grant that we got, $75,000 on your assumption page that we got this year, we are no longer going to see it in the next 2 subsequent years. And then the clean energy, the $173,000 that we're expecting to see this year, these are one-time things. So we are no longer going to see it in 17, 18, and 18, 19.
Is the state cutting that program? That's Prop 39, correct?
Is a one-time thing. Once you, it's a one-time funding. Once you use it, then this is it. But the lucky thing is, again, on the last line, on the second page of your assumption, I did my 2-year, multi-year projection based on we are still able to rent out the NEA site. So that will be the rental income that we are expecting to keep on receiving in 17, 18, and 18, 19.
If I may ask, there's a change there of $100,000. Where would that come from?
Okay, the reason why was for 16, 17, we actually rented out NEA starting in January to June. That's only half a year. So for next 2 subsequent years, I'm going to budget for the rental for the whole entire year. That is the reason why.
And these are just estimates outside of conversations and negotiations that we'll have, but just estimates for the DORA is making.
Right. That's a very good point. Absolutely. I just wonder whether we should be maybe if we believe that amount is going to be higher or lower, then should we express that here so that we have a more accurate view as to what that would be without, of course, disclosing our potential intent.
I don't know.
So I have a quick question about the MA. It's projected for $36,000 for 16-17, but there is no projection for 17-18 nor 18-19. Can you tell us a little bit about why?
The more money that state actually giving out the instruction to the school districts that you put in the budget when you see the money. So for the last couple of years, we haven't seen, well, no, not last couple of years. Several years before, we never seen any more money coming in until last year. They start paying back the money that they owed to the school district on MA. So that's why we start putting in the budget as we see the money coming in.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity.
And then Dora, on that second page on assumptions again, I see many of them not changing from year to year. Are those really fixed amounts? Are we do you believe it's a conservative assumption to just keep them as is? Or are they in any way variable that then can potentially be adjusted, either up or down?
Later on parcel tax, I will assume the same kind of money will be coming in, same as what we are getting for 16, 17. But I would like to point your attention to the Title I. Rumors saying that we might see a reduction of 12 to 22% on the Title I funding, not just for Emory, for every school district, because of the new ESSA Act, which is Eco Student Success Act that they passed in 17-18, January 1st, 2017-18, that the state might set aside more money on the holding on the side So you will see the school district might see a reduction on the Title I allocations. But again, I'm expecting to hear more information from the May revised workshop, and then I will update the board on that one.
Mr. Orsu, there's an item on the, going back to the PowerPoint on the second interim. The line item, the ECCL replacement reserve account, is that a cumulative account amount, 388,000, or is it just a one-time contribution?
Right now, how to come up with that 318,000 or 88,000? Let me go back.
No, 388,000. It's on your fund balance.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the 388,000 is the annual capital reserve account that we have to set up under the JOA. But the method of figuring out this 388,000 is the strict method. On the JOA, there is a page that is spelled out the total capital reserve for the next 40 years on these facilities. And what I did is use that figure divided by the
40 years.
Yeah, and this is the strict method. So 388,000 is an annual amount that we are required to set aside according to the JOA.
Under that premise, or I should say, is that premise, how should I say this? It's as if we're putting this money away, and I think it is, and maybe I didn't read the JOA correctly, but having said it's the capacity to replace as opposed to having the funds on hand. If it were the capacity, that would be bond issuance or our basically ability to borrow to build or rebuild. If that were the case, wouldn't this money would this money need to be earmarked for that specific reason? Because if we have the capacity to bond to do a replacement campus, wouldn't this $388,000 be better spent basically to help our bottom line? Is that a possibility with basically an interpretation of the JOA?
Well, actually, on the JOA, if you read the agreement itself, it doesn't mention what is the source of the capital reserve set aside money. It just said the district is required each year to set it aside. But just like what you mentioned, it could come out from the bond money, right, John?
I believe so. We can double check with our attorneys, but because we haven't specifically asked that question, but I'm betting you're probably right. So we can check and get back to you and let you know. It's a good question.
Because I think that would help.
Then we wouldn't have to set aside that money if we have that
close
capacity.
to $400,000 a year.
Yeah. We can check.
Okay.
Because right now, I think the percentage is 33% the city, and then the 30 to 70%. 30 is the city, and then the school district is 70%. But on the JOA, it did mention it could be negotiated between the district and the city. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So again, this number is subject to change if there is a new negotiation.
Good, thank you.
Great. And I have a question for John. The projection for the next 2 years assumes that the enrollment will be constant. They'll remain at the same level. Is that?
It's a kind of a typical conservative and good practice by Ms. Dorosu to assume constant enrollment until we know more. So that number, if it goes up as we think it will, then she'll revise this for the next time she presents to you.
I would absolutely encourage us to.
Yeah.
Like, we're putting enough pressure already on Dora to try to predict the future. And we appreciate it. You're doing an absolutely great job. And I'd recommend maybe some areas of opportunity for input there. If we believe that the conditions are going to change, then
Sure,
maybe
absolutely.
it'd be much more easy to
Yes.
get understanding for what's coming.
Absolutely.
And actually, not this board, but the last board did direct me to do the ADA on a flat numbers for the multi-year projection.
So we can consider changing that. And once we have more data in the spring, we'll review it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Dora, I'm still looking at the assumptions, and on the budget line with the ACES after-school program, it's in a negative now, but the next school years in 17-18 and 18-19, the same exact figures will be in a positive. Can you give a little clarity on that?
You mean the after-school
The
ACES program?
Correct.
Normally, that funding is very stable. So if we are going to get 97,000 this year, we are going to get the same allocation for the next 2 subsequent years, unless there is a big drop of after-school kids enrolling into that program.
So it looks like it's in the minus, or is it just something on my paper?
I don't see a minus on mine.
Okay, it's just on my
You
paper.
okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so again, we're looking at the summary page again. The 466,000 under 16-17 is the 4% minimum reserved, and same as the 474,000 for 17-18 and 489,000 for 18-19. Those are the 4% minimum reserve that we're required to make. So you see, we are.
Apologize.
Yes.
An important point here. If you go back to the previous slide.
Okay.
So the current projections here show that in 2 years we're going to cut our fund balance in half. Basically, we're going to go from 3.4 to 1.7.
Mhm.
And I just think it's important for us to, I guess, to call that out, right? And just to keep an eye on that.
Right. The assumption, this is based on the assumption that the governor does not have any kind of positive increase in May. The rumors are that there will be more state money and that he's going to have to show a little bit more of the budget and money, we hope, to the K-12 schools. But this does assume, you're right, we should keep an eye on it, and it does assume no additional money and steady enrollment. Absolutely.
All right. So we are seeing on the multi-year projections that there will be deficit spending in 17-18 and 18-19. Okay, now we are going back to see the current year, 16-17. Because some of the expenses that we're incurring right now is actually to allow for the carrying over from last year. So to tell the board the actual operating surplus for 16-17, instead of the 38,000, actually the operating surplus for Emory for this year, 16-17, is 191,000. Okay, so we are meeting the 4% required reserve, and the staff recommends the adoption of the second interim from the board. So any more questions?
Any questions, sir? Well, I'm not seeing any questions. I think we peppered you with enough questions during the process. Do we have any public comment?
And before the board adopted the budget, I want to go over the O&M budget. I don't think it's on the PowerPoint. I mean, I don't think it's on this laptop. Can we just quickly go over the O&M budget?
Was that on
It
the
should be a page. It said ECCL operations and maintenance budget. Because this budget is.
The first link on the.
Yeah, because this budget is going to be overseen both by the district and also the city. So I want to go over that with the board. So on the first column, you will see the 15-16 actuals. So these are audited actuals number. But we starting in 16-17, which is this fiscal year, we start actually going into the actual maintenance budget on the ECCL. And the second column is the adopted budget for 16-17. The next column, you see the working budget as of January 31st, 2017, you see that because of the expenses are higher right now to $1.11 million, so you will see additional general fund contribution to the maintenance program. And also you're seeing additional city share from city of Emeryville. And also one thing that I want to point to your attention is the third-party rental. There is a big jump from $13,000 that we originally budgeted during the budget adoption to increase to $100,000. So that explains why part of the reason we are seeing a jump on the utilities, because we are renting out the place. And the place is, it's open till 11:30 p.m. or even in the weekend. But we are seeing a growth in the third-party rental income coming in. And then the next column is the actual spending, which we already spent as of January 31st, 2017. And the last column shows you the balance as of January 31st, 2017. So this is a $1.11 million budget that we are projecting as of January 31st under the operational maintenance budget with the city. Any questions on this one?
Dora, could you remind me on utilities, especially on electric, what percentage of that increase was for the field versus any other expense? On utilities electric, jumping from 80 to 175, you mentioned, I believe, it was mainly because of the field?
On the budget, I put in an increase of $95,000.
We wouldn't be able to locate the exact, unless the field was on a meter by itself. We wouldn't. It was my guess, I think, that it was probably the field, but
Okay, so
we wouldn't be
we
sure.
have reason to believe that it's mainly the field.
That's a big chunk of it, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And there are quite a few meters in this ECCL location.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Dorsu, with the operations maintenance budget, would this be updated for the final budget in May, so we can get a better idea of how we're coursing?
Actually, this will be the
last.
the last budget update, but there will be another one when we are closer to the presenting the budget for next year, because I have to do an estimated actuals.
Okay.
So all these numbers will change. And at that time, not only I will be presenting you the next year's school budget, I should be able to show you the estimated actuals for 16, 17, that ending June 30th.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you,
Public
Dora.
comment?
You did a very nice job.
All right.
I'm sorry, Dora. I'm interested in what the income is for the rental of the facilities, because you're indicating high usage of electricity. I'm one of the ones where my classroom is used on a regular basis, so I'm wondering what the income is in reference to the rental of the facilities and whether it matches the use of the electricity, if it's a benefit or not at this point. How are we doing with that is the question.
Okay, under the O&M budget, as you can see on the third-party rental, right now is budgeted at $100,000. But I already did talk to the city. This $100,000 is very conservative number. And actually, we will be seeing it even exceeds the $100,000.
What do we believe it will be?
Well, the last conversation that I have with Pedro, he kind of already mentioned to me 110 or 120,000, but he wants me to be more conservative, just putting in the 100,000 on the second interim budget. But again, this is not the end of the school year yet. We're still having March, April, May, and June, so 4 more months. So I'm expecting this number will go up. The income, yes.
I think the PG&E costs are something you really have to watch. If you said there's numerous meters, then maybe we should be getting the reading from those meters so we can isolate where the problem is. Also, there's a lot of places that have lights that turn on by switch when you walk into the room. I mean, let's take a look right now. We got lights on back there that aren't being used. Maybe if you walked into the room and they turned on, you'd save a lot of money.
I wanted to chime in on that, is that I think overall the design meets Title 24, which would include those type of apparatus as far as when you walk in a room, and automatic occupancy sensors will turn a light on within a room. So it's meeting all codes, and codes have been very, very restrictive when it comes to energy use. So I don't doubt the use and the efficiency. It's just how long we're using the facility is, I think, our biggest surprise.
And also, just to let you guys know, when Andrew was here, presented that incentives check last time, I already put in a request through her that PG&E will be looking into the monthly bills for Emory and C.
And just if I might add, because I'm not sure if Ms. Miles' question was answered, so we're going to take in more than $100,000 for rental fees for this year, which makes up more than 50% of the electricity cost. So it's probably beneficial versus what it's costing us to keep the electricity going for the whole site. But I don't know if Ms. Miles got an answer, so I just want to make sure you heard that piece, that we're going to take in more than $100,000, we believe, this year.
It does seem revenue neutral, just considering that we went up, the utilities went up by 95,000, sorry. And so we see an increase in,
well, the
it seems like
estimate,
the revenue.
the estimate went up. Yeah, our estimate was off.
They both seem to be, yeah.
It kind of sounds a little bit like renting the field with those huge lights might be just renting the field, and it might not be advantageous monetarily to our benefit because we're just renting it to pay the bill that it's generating. I mean, if we're paying 100 right now and we're only going to bring in 110, I don't see a real gain.
I think one thing I think is we haven't necessarily identified exactly where the extra costs are coming from. So it may be some portion of it is keeping the lights on later, but perhaps, again, I don't know how we would identify this, but perhaps just the ECCL facility uses more electricity than, the Annie Yates site combined before. So I'm not sure how we take that into account or how we figure that out, but that's one thing to note.
And the other thing, just for us to consider, is that the city and I will meet together soon. I will ask Pedro with the city to start to look at what the rental rates are, and we may want to reconsider making some small adjustments to them.
Right. We may or may not want to make the renting of facilities a revenue generator. We may choose to make them just cover the costs, right? Because ultimately it's for the use of the public, right? But I guess that's a different.
Well, I think too it has to do with this is the first year of this operation, and I think we're getting our feet wet regarding how this is operating, and we should take an audit of what our expenses are, and is it a cost benefit ratio or a cost benefit analysis of just that. And I think we're acquiring data just to make that decision.
And also, we just moved into this facility not that long ago, and we haven't really started marketing the facilities to the outside groups. So hopefully by next year, we are going to see this number triple.
So do we have access to, on the city side, to see who's renting and how much they're renting for?
Right now, the master schedule is actually kept by the city, but we do have access to it.
Is there any way we can get a copy of that?
Let's go ahead and get that for them. I know the city has told us it's going to be very difficult to print out, but we need to figure out a way to get that.
Yeah, the last time when I requested it, they told me it's going to be over 400 pages. But let me double check with them and see. if I can have access to this master schedule, I love to forward that to the board.
Okay, they don't have to print it out. We'll take
Yeah,
it electronic.
electronic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think too, we can bring this point up back to the city school meeting as well, the committee there, and our, so I think that we can have at it with them.
But since we are meeting the 4%, we are, have enough reserve, I would recommend the board to approve the positive certification of the second interim. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comment after that round? If not, any other questions? All right. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All motion.
I'll second that.
All right. Roll call, please.
Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Inch?
Yes.
Member Langner?
Yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
President Miriam?
Yes. Motion carries unanimously. All right, this is the one I was really wanting to get to, I guess. Item 10.6, which is the 2017 California School Board Association Delegate Assembly election. We have the option to vote for 4 of the CSBA delegates for Region 7B, which Emory Unified it belongs to. Dr. Rubio, do you have anything on this?
I do not. I recall last year some of the board members knew 1 or 2 of the candidates or were more partial to particular school districts. I do not have any background information on these individuals, so I wish I could offer you more, but I do not.
Can we bring it back?
Does anybody have any questions pertaining to this? Because there's 4 people running and 4 positions open.
So are we supposed to be trying to approve this without having that information in front of us?
We have their applications.
Where are they?
They were attached to candidate info.
They're in your pack. They're in your packet. I mean, it appears that since there are 4 positions and only 4 candidates, that there isn't too much to consider in terms of this, other than taking action. It appears.
That's right. But it is on the agenda.
3 are incumbents, yeah. But
Yeah. Can we review them? Did everybody else have a chance to review them?
This is some analysis. This is for the fiscal oversight committee.
Is there a deadline on this?
I think, no, I don't think last time we had this thing, we did the same thing.
No, the last time we did have, I think, more people running than there were positions. So there was a little bit more, a slight more bit of thought required.
But the way I see it is that the applications are there, 4 candidates, 4 positions. I assume just move on this item.
I would think you're correct.
I would support that as well.
I'm not going to vote for somebody if I haven't been able to read.
You didn't have the candidate information?
I haven't looked at it, no. We haven't been getting the agendas until Sunday evening, and that's a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We haven't been getting the agendas until Sunday evening, and it's not having the weekend has been difficult.
I'm sorry. Okay, makes it harder.
Wasn't this posted on Friday?
No,
it wasn't.
posted
Okay.
on Sunday.
Oh, I didn't look at it until Sunday, so.
Okay. If that's the case, then let's go ahead and I would make a motion to table this item until the.
Oh, it's due March 15th.
I'm sorry?
It's due March 15th.
Okay.
And again, unless there's someone in particular you don't want to vote for, there's only 4 positions and there's only 4 candidates. So I would, it would seem that you could just take action and vote for all 4 people unless there's somebody here you really don't like.
I don't understand what we're voting for.
Just to fill those vacancies.
And what's their roles and responsibilities?
They report from the district representation at the county level.
So there's one from Berkeley.
Hayward, San Leandro, and Newark.
I met the woman from Berkeley, Beatrice Leva Cutler, at the last Alameda County School Boards Association. She spoke briefly. Clearly seemed to have the best interest of students in mind. She has as I believe most of these candidates do, have a long history in education, and have, as Ms. Tamery mentioned, 3 of them have previously served. Actually, I'm sorry, I believe 3 of them are current
Incumbents, yeah.
incumbents, and one, the 4th, has been a delegate for a number of years, but has not been a delegate, I believe, in the last year or 2. So she has also served as a delegate in the past.
I don't know if he was.
Any other questions or comments?
I would be okay with we were to vote. I would be okay if we were to vote.
Okay.
Why not?
You want to call for public
Do I
comment?
have any public comment on this item?
Yeah, I just had a question. What's the consequence of not voting on it? Of not taking a position? I mean, if you don't know who you're voting for, to just vote because their names are there, I don't think that's a good reason.
Well,
I don't know if there's any hard consequence. I think the county would be very upset and wonder why we did not participate as a school district.
And information was available prior to the board meeting, and I think it was a responsibility of every member on the board to be ready for this meeting. And I don't have any problem about going forward. If that's the case, do you have any questions, comments?
No, I was just going to move that we
Okay.
go forward to vote. But
Okay. I have a motion to accept all 4 candidates.
yes, so moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Is the motion before us that you're voting positively for all 4?
That's correct.
Okay. Member Ball?
Yes.
Member Solis?
Yes.
Member Collins?
Yes.
Member Inch?
No.
Member Langner?
Yes.
Member Vargas?
Yes.
President Merriam?
Yes. Motion carries 6-1. Next item is item 10.7, approval for the parcel tax committee applicant. And Dr. Rubio, can you explain a little bit more about this?
Our parcel tax committee, like some of our other committees, it has designated positions, and we do have a vacancy. Per our bylaws, we are looking to fill that vacancy, and after Mr. John Bowners resigned to fill his position on the Emeryville City Council, we did have an additional vacancy created. So in front of you this evening, you have an application from one Jennifer Paulino, who is an Emeryville resident who comes highly recommended as a potential candidate to meet twice a year when our parcel tax committee meets. Oh, I apologize. Oh, I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. My apologies. There are 3, and excuse me, I need to turn the page. There are 3 candidates in front of you to make a decision on which candidate you want for that position. So there is Ms. Paulino, I mentioned Mr. Ken Bukowski, and Mr. John Van Geffen. Sorry about that.
All right.
And how many are we voting for?
1.
Okay, let's open the debate, discussion, questions regarding the candidates.
Sorry, so are we voting, or are we voting to
No, we're just going to
accept the 3 applicants?
Yes, basically discussion.
Voting for one of the 3?
Yes,
One
but
of the
if there's any discussion pertaining to the applications. So, do we have anything?
I don't know if this is particularly instructive to anyone else, but I noticed that Ms. Paulino, one of her references was John Bouters, who was the previous holder of the position, if that carries any weight for anyone.
And conversely, Mr. Van Geffen has Dr. Rubio's reference.
I was going to say.
I'm sorry.
I didn't even know nothing about it.
Okay. We have a good mix of.
I didn't know he was putting my name.
Ms. Collins, did you want to add anything? I noticed you're on here as well.
Surprise. It's a little bit of a surprise. I mean, I don't mind, but.
Is this a surprise to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Collins is listed as a reference for Mr. Van Geffen.
I want to check the other two out real quick.
And that was a surprise to her.
See, her references are.
Any further comments?
2 more
questions?
minutes. 1 more minute.
Oh, okay.
Comment?
Go,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I reviewed all three prior to the meeting. Great. So I reviewed all three prior to the meeting, and then what I'm looking again for in trying to fill this seat is looking for a skill set that would be beneficial or potentially related to what this task is, what we're asking for this person to do. So as we vote, I recommend that we consider that.
All right, thank you. Anything else?
Was there any one candidate that you felt had a skill set that was particularly suited to the position?
I like Van Geffen's profile. I think that his profile would be very well suited for this.
I liked that Jennifer had Bowder's endorsement.
I'm still a little concerned about having a reference that's not requested by the individual. I don't know. It's there's 11,000 people in this city. You have to do a little fudging. I'm a little.
But I agree with Cruz. I kind of feel like he would be an asset to the committee. I do. It was a sneaky one, but it was okay.
Okay, if you're okay with it.
Things always
Anyway.
work out for the better.
Okay, let's open it up then as far as, do a round robin as far as voting on the individuals. And I'll take tallies of it. Is that okay? 3 members. Who here would support the first applicant, Ms. Paulino?
I would.
Anyone else? Mr. Bukowski application? Mr. Bukowski? Anyone? And then Mr. Van Geffen. Just go down the line.
I support Mr. Van Geffen.
Okay.
Second.
Oh,
Same here.
I'm just taking votes. Okay. 2. Okay. And I'm just going to make things interesting, and I'll no. No. I would. I know I forgot to say something about Ms. Paulino. I would have voted for Ms. Paulino, but that's the case as it stands. I'm going to offer up the student reps, although there's no bearing on your vote, but I want you to still be involved with the process. I'm sorry. I would like to have the student representatives voice their vote as well. Knowing so much about these candidates.
Both for Van Geffen. So.
Okay. And the final tally.
Same for Van Geffen.
All right. With that in mind, we have a vote of 5-2 for Mr. Van Geffen to join the Citizens Oversight Committee. We you'll separate them, but as far as overall vote tally, the board carries 3-2 on that, with 2 student representative votes for Mr. Van Geffen.
So President Merriam, did I understand that you have voted for Ms.
That's
Paulino?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yeah. You want to?
So that concludes that portion of the agenda. Next item is calendar review. Next regular board member meeting is March 22nd at 6 p.m. Are we going to continue with 6 p.m.?
Oh, my apologies. That's a very good question. I know that there was an idea that we might go ahead and change our start time, and I believe it would. I can't recall if we were thinking of keeping the start time and arriving at 5:30 and trying to stick with 6, or are we thinking of adjusting it? I don't think I recall correctly.
I think that was the consensus, and that's how we arrived at this last board meeting, to arrive at 5:30 for a closed session, and then from there open the proceedings, the regular open
So we'll
session.
keep it the same for now, but the board did, I think there was a request to have the item on an agenda for discussion, so if you like, we'll bring it on the next agenda.
Okay, let's do that. Next agenda item, our next meeting agenda will include that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No.
Thank you. All right.
I have one announcement to make. Let's see, it was back on February 9th, so it was the day after our last meeting. I attended the Alameda County School Boards Association meeting. It was in San Leandro, and all the school boards from Alameda County were present at the meeting. And actually, so it looks like the board minutes were cut off. It was in sort of a weird format. So I will send you via email the complete minutes, which are not maybe another page longer. But we elected the Alameda County Board Association has its own sort of set of governing board members. So you see on here the first 2 items, president and vice president. So a new board was elected. And there were a few other members elected to different positions. We also had a speaker. So the board nominations and elections, that was our primary action item from the meeting. There was also a speaker. It was Mr. Ian Fregosi of an organization called Evolve California, and I've also provided you with a copy of his presentation. He presented on his organization's purpose, which is to repeal and or modify Proposition 13, which changed the way that both homeowners and commercial properties are taxed. And so his organization is working to, which significantly decreased the amount of money brought into the state from those revenues. And greatly impacted school funding. So his organization is working to repeal and or modify Prop 13, and there's some more details in the presentation that I've provided you. There's also a couple, I will be attending the next meeting, which is scheduled for March 20th, and there'll be a presentation on the LCAP dashboard at that meeting, and I will report back on at our March 22nd meeting.
All right, thank you very much. All right, any other announcements?
Yeah, I met with a representative of Aim High, which is a summer school program that's interested in Emeryville and offering some services to our students. I think Rubio is probably familiar, has heard of Aim High, and I was wanting to schedule them to perhaps give a presentation.
I think that would be great. Aim High. She met with an organization called Aim High.
Can you spell that?
Aim, A-I-M. Yeah. Thank you.
And I think I'm going to suggest that we add a future board agenda items to the agenda so we can have these type of discussions rather, because I think our board reports are evolving, not Ms. Nanglin's, but I think the suggestion that Ms. Inch brought up was a good point. I think we should incorporate a future board item agenda, or agenda items, so we can have that start the discussion.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay, thank you. Any other? All right, with that being said, we have, of all things, adjournment to closed session.